Chapter 36. The Uddhava Gita. The Question. The Yadavas were destroying themselves. A curse had been laid. By sages they had insulted in a moment of collective pride that the Yadava clan would turn upon itself in internecine war. The signs were appearing everywhere: bad omens, strange visions, the behavior of people becoming erratic and cruel. Dwarka itself was beginning to feel the end. Krishna called Uddhava. Uddhava was the greatest of Krishna's disciples, not in the dramatic way of warriors or devotees who had overcome impossible suffering, but in the quiet way of someone who had spent decades in the Lord's company, with eyes and heart wide open, learning everything he could learn. He was versed in every branch of knowledge. He loved Krishna with the steady, clear love of a philosopher who had found in his teacher not just wisdom, but the source from which wisdom comes. When Krishna called him and told him what was coming, the dissolution of the Yadavas, his own departure from this world, Uddhava's composure broke. He could not maintain the philosopher's equanimity before this. He fell at Krishna's feet and wept. "You are leaving," he said. "You are leaving and taking with you the one thing that made this world endurable. How are we supposed to live without you?" It was the most human question ever asked of God. And Krishna, who had answered questions from Arjuna on a battlefield, from Brahma before creation, from the assembled sages at every cosmic occasion, sat down with his grieving disciple and answered him. Not with philosophy, not immediately, first with acknowledgement. He let Uddhava's grief be real. He did not rush past it to teaching. Then he began. What he taught Uddhava over the next many chapters of the 11th skanda is the Uddhava Gita, in many ways the most complete spiritual teaching in all of the Bhagavata, the place where the Bhagavatam's philosophy reaches its fullest expression. It contains everything he had said before and everything that remained unsaid. Chapter 37. The Avadhuta and the 24 Gurus. In the heart of the Uddhava Gita, Krishna tells Uddhava the story of a wandering sage, an Avadhuta, who was asked by a king, "You have no teacher, no lineage, no tradition, yet you walk in perfect peace and wisdom. How did you come by this knowledge?" The Avadhuta said, "I have 24 teachers. All of them are from this world. None of them said a single word to me. He had learned from the earth, which bears everything placed upon it, both flowers and garbage, both temples and refuse, without complaint and without preference. From earth he had learned equanimity. From water, which purifies whatever it touches, flows always to the lowest place, and takes the shape of whatever contains it, he had learned purity and humility. From fire, which burns everything without discrimination, which transforms whatever enters it, he had learned that consciousness transforms what passes through it. From the wind, which moves freely through all things without being soiled by any of them, he had learned non-attachment. From the sky, which contains everything and is touched by nothing, he had learned the nature of pure awareness. From a python, which lies still and eats only what comes to it without hunting, he had learned contentment. From the ocean, which receives all rivers without increasing and gives to all clouds without decreasing, he had learned fullness. From a moth, who flies into a flame because of its attraction to beauty, he had learned the danger of unexamined desire. From the elephant who is trapped by his own desire for the touch of the female elephant, he had learned the danger of sensory compulsion. From honeybees, who gather sweetness and store it only to have it taken, he had learned the futility of accumulation. From a fish caught by a baited hook, he had learned that the tongue is the most dangerous sense organ. From a prostitute, who had waited all night for a customer who never came, and in that waiting had accidentally spent the whole night in spiritual vigil, he had learned that even circumstances of apparent bondage can be transformed into liberation. The Avadhuta concluded, "The entire world is my teacher. There is nothing in creation that does not have something to teach a mind that is willing to be taught." Uddhava listened with his whole being, and slowly in the listening, his grief was not erased but transformed into understanding. Chapter 38. The Uddhava Gita, Bhakti and the Self. Having told the story of the Avadhuta, Krishna moves into the philosophical heart of his teaching to Uddhava: the nature of the self, the three gunas, the liberation of consciousness, and why bhakti is the supreme path. He describes the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, with extraordinary precision. Tamas is the quality of inertia, darkness, sleep, ignorance. Rajas is the quality of activity, passion, desire, ambition. Sattva is the quality of clarity, light, peace, knowledge. Every human mind is a mixture of these three, and every thought, emotion, and action can be understood through their interplay. But then Krishna says something that goes beyond the usual teaching about gunas. Even sattva must be transcended. The person who is deeply sattvic, peaceful, clear, wise, is very close to liberation. But they must take one more step. They must transcend even their love of clarity, their identification with being a wise and peaceful person. The final veil is always the most subtle. He then teaches about the self, the Atman. The body dies, the mind changes, the personality transforms across lifetimes. What remains? What is the unchanging thread through every experience? He describes the self as pure witness consciousness, not doing anything, not wanting anything, not suffering from anything, simply aware. And he describes how suffering arises not from life's experiences, but from the misidentification of this pure awareness with the limited temporary structures through which it perceives. And then he speaks of bhakti again, but differently than it had been spoken of before. He says, Bhakti is not one path among many, it is the path that contains all paths. The person with true devotion naturally becomes wise, because love makes you deeply attentive. The person with true devotion naturally becomes detached, because love of the infinite makes finite things look appropriately small. The person with true devotion naturally becomes peaceful, because the one who has found what they were always seeking has nothing left to agitate them. Uddhava asked, Who is dearest to you? Krishna answered with a list that included the compassionate, the non-violent, the truthful, the equanimous, the one who sees Bhagavan in all beings. He said, These are my own heart. Chapter 39, the Uddhava Gita, the Supreme Surrender. The Uddhava Gita reaches its apex in what is perhaps the most intimate statement Bhagavan makes anywhere in the entire Bhagavat. Uddhava has asked, What is the final teaching? If I could carry only one thing from everything you have said, what should it be? Krishna said, Abandon every other dharma. Surrender to me alone. Do not fear. I will liberate you from all sin, from all suffering, from all bondage. This I promise. This statement echoes the most famous verse of the Bhagavad Gita, but here it is said not on a battlefield in a moment of crisis. It is said quietly, to a beloved disciple, in the sorrow of an ending and with the weight of a lifetime of teaching behind it. It is the last word. After everything, all the philosophy, all the yoga systems, all the cosmology, after all of it, this: let go, trust, I am here. He also teaches in the final sections the practice of seeing Bhagavan in everything, not as a poetic sentiment but as a precise meditative practice. When you look at water, see Bhagavan. When you hear sound, hear Bhagavan. When you notice the space in which everything occurs, recognize it as Bhagavan's nature. The whole world becomes not a distraction from the spiritual life, but its field and its medium. He teaches the signs of the bhakta who has fully realized. This person is fully present with whoever they are with, fully attentive to whatever they are doing, yet internally untouched by outcome. They neither rejoice at gain nor grieve at loss. They are not cold, they are warm, deeply warm, available to everyone, but their warmth does not depend on how they are received. They have found what Dhruva found, what Prahlada knew, what the gopis taught Uddhava, a love that is larger than any circumstance. Uddhava rose from that teaching different from how he had sat down. His grief had not disappeared, it was present, real, honest, but it now rested in something larger than itself. He bowed to Krishna and went to Badarikashrama in the Himalayas, where he spent the rest of his life in continuous meditation on the form and teaching of the one he had loved and lost, and found more completely in the losing. Chapter 40, the Hamsa Avatara, Wisdom for the Sages. The 11th skanda contains a teaching that is easy to miss in the grandeur surrounding it, but which the tradition considers one of the Bhagavata's philosophical jewels, the teaching of Bhagwan in the form of a Hamsa, a swan, to Brahma's sons, the Sanaka sages. The Sanaka sages, four ancient sage children who had refused to grow beyond boyhood in order to remain forever in the simplicity and directness of pure inquiry, had gathered before Brahma with a question. The question was about the nature of the mind. How does consciousness, which is inherently pure and free, become entangled in the senses and the world? And how does it return to its natural freedom? Brahma meditated on this question and could not fully answer it. Then from the sky descended a swan, white, impossibly beautiful, moving with a grace that suggested it was at home in a dimension beyond the visible. The swan spoke, and what it said resolved the question and exceeded it simultaneously. The Hamsa taught, the mind becomes entangled when it directs its natural attention outward towards sense objects and forgets to inquire into its own source. The mind that investigates itself, that asks, "Who is thinking?" discovers very quickly that the thinker cannot be found. There is only awareness, pure, open, undivided awareness. And that awareness is what the Upanishads call Brahman, what the Bhagavata calls Bhagavan, the same reality described in different languages. The practice he gave is simple but profound. When the mind wanders toward an object and generates desire or aversion, do not fight it. Simply turn the same attention inward and ask, who is noticing this? Where does this desire arise? The mind that looks for its own source finds that the source is already the destination. The swan then dissolved back into the sky. The Sanaka sages sat in silence. Brahma sat in silence. Some teachings arrive and do their work before you have finished hearing them. Chapter 41. The Last Days in Dwarka. The omens began quietly, then became impossible to ignore. In Dwarka, dogs ran through the streets at midday. Crows circled over the palace in numbers no one had seen. The sacred fire at rituals produced no auspicious signs. The directions felt confused, as if the sky itself had lost its orientation. Elders wept without knowing why. The Yadavas, drunk with the wealth and power of Dwarka, already corrupted by ease, had committed a great offense against the sage Vishwamitra and others. Young Yadava men had dressed Samba in women's clothing and mockingly asked the sages what this woman would give birth to. The sages, seeing through the disguise, said, "She will give birth to a pestle of iron that will destroy your entire clan." The pestle appeared as prophesied, was ground to dust and thrown into the sea, and from the sea grew sharp reeds along the shore. Krishna saw all of this. He understood. He had been present in this world for the specific purpose for which he had come, and that purpose was complete. The great war at Kurukshetra had ended. Dharma had been re-established. The Yadavas, in their prosperity and pride, had become a different kind of problem, one that could not be solved by war or wisdom. He told the Yadavas to make a pilgrimage to Prabhasa. He told them to fast before going. But the Yadavas arrived and began to drink instead. What happened in the fight that broke out among them, brother against cousin against old friend, using those very reeds from the shore as weapons, was both tragedy and grace. Krishna watched. He did not intervene. Because some endings cannot be prevented and should not be, because they carry within them the seeds of what must come next. He spoke last to Uddhava. He sent him to Badrikashrama. He arranged the world as it needed to be arranged before he left it. Chapter 42. The Departure of the Lord. Arjuna came to Dwarka after the Yadava dissolution and found a city that had already begun to feel like a memory. The palaces were there, the streets were there, but whatever it was that had made Dwarka Dwarka had already departed. He found Krishna's chariot, the great chariot with the Garuda banner, standing silent in the courtyard. He found the divine horses with their heads bowed. He found the women of the palace quiet, their faces carrying something beyond grief. And then he found Krishna. Krishna was seated alone at the edge of the forest, beneath a pipal tree. He looked, in the only moment of the entire Bhagavata where the Lord appears to be at rest, like a flame after it has burnt everything. There was nothing left to be done. He was simply present, completely present, in the way that a thing is most completely itself at the moment of its ending. When Arjuna saw him, he fell apart. This was the friend who had driven his chariot, who had held his hands when he wept, who had spoken those words to him at Kurukshetra that had made life possible when it seemed impossible. The thought of the world without this presence was not something Arjuna's mind could hold. Krishna looked at him with the eyes he had always had, completely there, completely clear, a little amused, entirely loving. He said, I am departing, Arjuna. Take the women of Dwarka and the children to safety. Protect what remains. He was already thinking of others. A hunter named Jara, who had mistaken Krishna's foot, visible through leaves, for a deer's eye, released an arrow. The arrow struck the foot. Krishna accepted it. He accepted it the way he had accepted everything, with the perfect equanimity of one who knows that nothing that appears to happen is happening to what he truly is. He departed. Dwarka submerged into the sea. Arjuna stood on the shore looking at water where a city had been, and the age of Kali, which had been waiting at the threshold since Parikshit's time, stepped fully into the world.